the media, as well as any other members of the civil society or even the public, was allowed anywhere near the Grand Pacific Hotel, where most, if not all, of Wang Yi's meetings took place. We do know that all of those who were part of this meeting joined virtually. We know as well that there was not consensus, which means that not all 10 of the countries of the Pacific Islands who have relationships with the People's Republic of China agreed to the terms of this deal.
And Fiji's Prime Minister made some opening remarks after the meeting. What did you make of the comments around climate change?
Well, my understanding from the way that the Prime Minister Frank Bainimarama spoke is that he felt that he had in China partners who were willing to placate or to address the Pacific Island nations and the sort of demands that they've had over the past several years with regards to partners reducing global emissions. He sounded as if he was friendlier towards the Chinese, given that the Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong just left the country a few days ago.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yet China itself is lagging behind as well in terms of their efforts on climate change.
That's right. Although the Chinese government has in recent weeks, and we suspect that comments were directed at the Australian government, the incoming one, China has told the Pacific Island countries that it intends to, and I quote a little bit, to say, do what the Australians have promised but won't, and what the Americans have promised and haven't. So it sounds like they intend to help the Pacific Islands in that way. However, well, the one demand that the Pacific Island governments and the youth climate action movement has made off of Australia over the past few years is a reduction in its coal and gas exploration. And so, interestingly, it is China who is the biggest importer of coal out of Australia.
Yeah. What else did Frank Bainimarama say about any future deals with China? Would they be a multilateral? Would it be a multilateral approach, or still the bilateral relationship that they've had in the past?
This tour that the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi made is two-faced in that way, or multifaceted, let's call it that. With every government he visited, there is a separate bilateral conversation happening. So there are deals that it's signed directly with this government. So, for example, there is a 3-point deal it's made with Fiji in various sectors: agriculture, tourism, trade, climate change, health. And then at the same time, this wider, broad-based partnership that it intends to sign with all of its Pacific friends is multilateral in its approach. And so, therefore, it requires consensus of all 10 of those Pacific Island countries.
China said that the nations in the region should not be concerned about its ambitions in the region. Is there any comfort from those words, or is there a sense that they will continue to revisit this until they get what they are after?
Well, I think given the way that the rest of the Pacific have responded quite swiftly to when revelations of these deals and the partnerships that China intends to have with the Solomon Islands, given the way in which the Pacific Island governments responded swiftly and the way the Solomon Islands government was itself summoned to Fiji only a few weeks ago to explain their position and to explain the deal, and given that today, despite a lengthy tour across the Pacific Islands, the governments of the Pacific did not reach a consensus, we can gather from that there is still some reservation, there's still some concern. There are quite a few countries in the Pacific who are very close to our Western allies and Western friends, and so there's still not a resolution as to whether or not Pacific Island countries feel safe and feel that there are no strings attached to the help that will be coming from China.
Lice, you're an experienced reporter. Have you ever encountered this kind of event, this kind of secrecy, this kind of issue where the media is not invited and not welcome?
No, Beverly, I must say, sadly, I've never experienced what seemed to me, what was very confusing over the past 48 hours in which Wang Yi actually conducted meetings and toured Suva. In the first day of his tour, he met with the Secretary General of the Pacific Islands Foreign Secretariat, His Excellency Mr. Henry Puna, and I watched as visiting Chinese officials tried to physically remove cameramen that the PIFs or the Foreign Secretariat had allowed onto the premises to just video and photograph the initial meet and greet of the two leaders. I watched as Chinese government media and Chinese officials tried to stand in the way of these cameramen so that they wouldn't be able to do their work. And I must say, I was confused in the few minutes and seconds that I saw that happen. Thankfully, the Foreign Secretariat were very vocal in their insistence that they would not suppress or oppress the media and that they would allow the Pacific media to conduct itself in the way that free media does. Today, we were constantly reminded and removed from places which other branches of the Fijian government had allowed us into, and we were treated like criminals, really. And the way in which the press event post-meeting was conducted this afternoon, where each of us was vetted by the Chinese officials, both visiting and resident, and then even our media passes were issued by the government of China. They were not issued by local police or local government authorities, which is usually the case when there is a high-level foreign dignitary visiting, or even when there is a high-level government event. We were told that we could not ask questions, and then when we did ask questions, a colleague of mine from the ABC Bureau in Canberra asked a question, and he was physically restrained by government of Fiji officials and told to sit down by Chinese military who were in the room. So it was very confusing, and I must say it was frightening. I was quite rattled.
Yeah, quite a confronting experience. Well, good to get your first-hand perspective there, Lice. Thank you so much.
Binaka.